I'm back with part 10, guys. Next, Donald Trump was asked by the moderators about January 6th and if he regretted any of his actions that day. He claimed that he only asked his supporters to peacefully and patriotically go to the Capitol and protest while he was giving his speech. He said that nobody was unalived that day other than Ashley Babbitt, and that she was wrongfully unalived by an out of control police officer. That's absolutely not true. Ashley Babbitt was unalived by a police officer as her and many other rioters were beating down the doors to the House floor, where there were House members actively still sheltering in place. They were given warnings that if they proceeded to breach the doors, that they would have to use lethal force. And Ashley Babbitt continued to go ahead and push her way through the window that had been busted out by one of her fellow rioters. So she was not unalived by an out of control police officer. She was unalived by a police officer who was doing his job to protect members of Congress who were actively trying to do their jobs that day. Donald Trump said that he didn't do anything wrong that day. All he did was give a speech. He proceeded to blame Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C. for what happened that day. Basically, anybody but himself. Also, the statement that he made that Ashley Babbitt was the only one unalive that day is absolutely untrue. There was a gentleman by the name of Kevin Greeson who died of a heart attack that day. There was Benjamin Phillips, who had founded a pro-Trump website, who died of a stroke that day. And there was also a lady named Roseanne Boyland who was crushed by fellow rioters. Vice President Harris responded by saying that Donald Trump incited a violent mob to attack the Capitol that day, and that over 140 law enforcement officers were injured and that some were actually unalived as a result of the events that took place. Among those officers were Brian Sicknick, Jeffrey Smith, who unalived himself days after January 6th, and Howard Liebengood, who also unalived himself as a result of the events that took place on January 6th. Vice President Harris actually went on to point out the fact that Donald Trump was actually indicted and impeached by the United States House of Representatives for the events that took place on January 6th and the fact that he incited that mob to do what they did that day. Vice President Harris then went on to make reference to comments that Donald Trump made about a rally that took place in Charlottesville, a rally that was conducted by white nationalists who were chanting anti-Semitic slogans, and even where a young woman had been unalived that day. Donald Trump actually said that there were fine people on both sides of that rally. I'm sorry, there's no such thing as fine people when it comes to a group of white nationalists. That they don't exist. Vice President Harris also brought up the fact that in a debate that took place between Donald Trump and Joe Biden in the last presidential election, that Donald Trump was asked about the support that he was receiving from a group of militia people called the Proud Boys. And Donald Trump actually told the Proud Boys to stand back and stand by, instead of just simply saying, I don't want or desire the support of groups like the Proud Boys. That's what he actually should have said. She also made reference to some of the extreme rhetoric that comes from the right side of the aisle, and comments that Donald Trump actually made at some of his rallies, saying that there would be a bloodbath if he loses this election. Donald Trump defended himself by saying that the comments about a bloodbath were in reference to the auto industry. He then turned focus back to the border and said that immigrants are unaliving people, unlike the January 6th rioters. I'm sorry, but the things that happened on January 6th were extremely violent and unacceptable, and the fact that he would make any kind of statement to undermine that fact is unacceptable. He's actually come out and said that he would pardon the people who have been convicted for the crimes that they committed on January 6th. That is absolutely insane. Those people committed real crimes and they deserve the sentences that they've received. I'm just going to go ahead and take a minute now to kind of remind everyone about the things that took place on January 6, 2021, because in my opinion, that alone, not to mention all the other crap that this man has said and done, but this event alone and the fact that he waited so long to call for them to all go home is enough of a reason to not